Hello there, I'm the Paranoid King. I'm currently ranked Platinum on my main account and looking to get better by analyzing my gameplay. Hopefully you too can learn from my mistakes and thought patterns to improve your own games. We're in the Nicoverse galaxy, which means everyone gets 2 free copies of Nico's Help. I generally hold on to these until the late game to try to 2-star 5-cost units or get my carries to 3-star once I know what comp I'm running. I tried going for the Xayah with the glove, as that's a really good pairing, but I didn't get it, got a bit flustered, and ended up going with the safe choice of Vest. I actually like going for Vest first, as it works in every comp, where something like a Rod or a Tear is riskier, as it forces your hand a bit more. In this first shop I buy the pair of Twisted Fates. In the early game, 2-star units are super important, so I generally pick up every pair I can regardless of synergy. A third Twisted Fate gives me a 2-star. I also pick up the Poppy to use as a frontline unit. There are 2 Chronos in the shop, so I'm hoping for some gold here to be able to pick them up and get an early game lead with synergies. I sold the Yasuo and picked up the Blitzcrank, so now I have 2 Sorcerers and 2 Chrono. This is super lucky, getting 3 units in one shop, so of course I buy them, and now I use that for my Chrono synergy instead of the Blitzcrank. I compared the stats here between the Blitz and the Poppy to see who's tankier, and Poppy wins out just a little bit. I wouldn't have an extra Chrono synergy since there would be 3 Chronos with the Blitzcrank, plus Poppy also hits the backline with her Buckler throw. I also put the Bramble Vest onto her to give her a little bit more tankiness, since I'm probably going to sell her eventually anyway, long before I decide to use it for a potential GA. I picked up the second Poppy with the extra gold from winning, and buy this pair of Fioras in the next shop, continuing the theme of buying as many pairs as possible in the early game to maximize my chances of hitting a 2-star early. I scout here to get a sense of what other people are playing, although it's a bit too early to tell as people haven't really come across the units to solidify any sort of comp at this point. It's really just to see what side they're on to see if I should switch to the other side. I can 2-star my Fiora here, so of course she goes in. I only saw one Blitzcrank when I scouted, so I could either put her in the back as Blitzbait, but then she would make it up to the front line later, or take the small risk that I'll face the Blitzcrank player, but I go with this as it's the more likely. Unfortunately, I do face the Blitzcrank player. He pulls my Caitlyn, who is my main carry at this point, and so I lose to this team. Going into Carousel, I have a lot of Chronos as well as a lot of AD items, so I'm thinking about Chrono Kayle, in which case I would need either a Rod for Rageblade or another bow for RFC. I missed my 2 items partially because I needed to check back on my board, so that's something that I should have done a little bit sooner in preparation for going into the Carousel. I end up with a glove, which isn't the worst item, since that can pair with the sword to make Infinity Edge, which is a good item for the Aurelia that will eventually go into my comp if I do decide to go Chrono Kayle. I scout here to see what comps other people are running, to see if I'm contested for Chrono Kayle or any of the other comps that I might want to run. I see a couple potentials, but nobody with a Kayle, so that's good. I fumble a bit here, as at this point in the game I'm still not sure exactly what comp I want to play, and don't want to commit to items. I pick up a Leona, who would give me Vanguard and eventually Cybers. I really should make the IE at this point, since I have a lot of items sitting unused. In this next shop, I definitely should have picked up the Xayah and the Ezreal, since Xayah would give me Blade Master synergy, which is super important if I'm going for Aurelia, but I sort of missed that, so that's a mistake on my part. I'm playing it safe by picking up lots of different units that will make me a bit more flexible if I end up with some pairs later on. But really I should have just committed to what my strongest synergies at the time were and sold the extra units to get more gold later on, since the early game units aren't as important as when we start getting to 4-cost units. I have the units that would lead me towards Brawler Blaster, but I don't have red buff and it's contested, so that's not a good path to go down. At this point, I definitely need to make some items. I think the best would have been IE and Rageblade, putting them both on the Caitlyn. I end up making a Guardian Angel instead, which isn't a bad item, and is actually super important for the Chrono Kayle build as well. It's just a bit better usually to have a damage item on a carry rather than a defensive item. That should be your second priority when composing items. Since I'm not sure whether I will find an Aurelia first or a Kayle first, I should have put myself in the best position to be able to put the optimal item on whoever I find and can add to my comp. I don't have a ton of 2-stars here, so going forward my board is going to get relatively weaker and weaker, so I should focus on leveling here to get to the 4 cost so I can solidify what I'm going to play and start building the comp around those units. This person's board is very strong, with 3-star Zoe and lots of multi-target damage. I definitely need more CC and AoE damage in my comp to be able to compete against comps at this stage. Shen and Kassadin are both good for Chrono Kayle. If I'd bought the Zayas earlier, I'd have Celestial buff and Blade Master, but I didn't. I roll once here, looking hopefully for either an Aurelia or a Kayle. I don't find them. I do get a 2-star Malphite, which makes my front line a bit beefier, so that's good. At this point, I have enough of a front line where I should have put Fiora in the back against any possible Blitzcrank hooks, but luckily I had the GA on the Caitlyn so that even though she died, she got to come back to life and do more damage so I could win this fight. In this carousel, I'd really like another sword or a bow. Unfortunately, it's all defensive items. I see I have a glove, which is best to save to make into the IE for Aurelia, rather than putting it into a Quicksilver Sash. My vest could pair with another vest for Bramble, which is a good item as it is both defensive as well as it does damage. Here, I could either choose to level and put in the Lux to pair with Twisted Fate for a sorcerer bonus, or waiting and getting more gold. If the lobby were stronger, I would probably level, but I'm in pretty good shape overall relative to the rest of the players, so I go for gold since I'll need it to roll down later. I now have gold in excess of 50, which means that I won't keep getting extra interest, so I use that excess to level up and put in another unit. I choose to go for 4 Chrono here, as that just improves an already strong synergy that I had. I go for Ezreal over the Shen, as my front line is pretty strong, and I could always use more damage. Wukong is very good for this comp. He's objectively better on his own than the Blitzcrank, but the Blitzcrank has Brawler synergy right now, so I keep him in. I get lots of good units here. I could switch Malphite and Blitz for Wukong and Jace, but I don't think the extra damage is worth the loss of tankiness. I would need to put both Shen and Aurelia in for Blade Master, so I switched the Vi in for the Blitz for Cybers, which would have been stronger if any of them actually had items on them, but they don't. My Aurelia got Zephyr'd and somehow I still win. My opponent's Fiora was also missing an item, despite that person having a lot of items on their bench, so I guess it's just a good tip is if you have that many items sitting, you should probably put it on somebody, especially if they need it for their synergy. Here, I'm able to 2-star my Blitz, so he goes in for the Malphite and the Malphite goes away, because I'm not trying to run 4 Brawlers. Switching the Ezreal for the Shen was a good move, as it kept 4 Chrono but also gave me Blade Master. His position was terrible though. Ideally, he'd be in my front line with Vi in the back right as Blitz bait. I definitely should be scouting more and keeping track of who I'm fighting, so I can position more optimally for the people I'm likely to go up against, so that my carries don't get hooked or otherwise disabled. I can hook the right people, and my Vi can charge towards the right side. At this point, I'm level 7, I have 50 gold. I should probably roll down because I'm missing some crucial units. I have yet to find a Kayle, I have yet to 2-star my Irelia, and I really need to do those 2 things if I'd like any chance at winning. I do put the Bramble on the Fiora though, so at least all of my Cybernetics have an item. Here I'd love to get the Misfortune to pair with the Ezreal for Blaster, but she usually goes pretty fast and I have last pick, so that didn't seem likely. The best pick is the Bow, as that gives me RFC for Kayle. Or the Kayle that I would really like to have. I finally get a Kayle! Here is where I think I make the mistake that ends up costing me first place. I decide to spend a lot of gold to level up to put in this Kayle, even though she's only 1 star. I started with 60 gold and ended up with 16, so I spent 44 gold to put in that unit. So that's 22 rerolls I could have done, which I probably should have done, to be able to put in either a 2-star Irelia or a 2-star Kayle, rather than 1-star versions of both of them. Now I'm trying to roll to find more Kayles or Irelias, but I can't because I already spent all my gold. I try to use a Nico to 2-star my Kayle, but I'm a little bit too late, so the extra copy goes to my bench, which is not great, because now I've wasted a Nico and I might have rerolled the Kayle next turn anyway. Luckily, I am able to 2-star my Irelia, and a fully itemized Kayle, even at 1 star, still does a lot of damage, so I'm not in the worst shape possible. Now that both my main damage dealers are 2-star, I need to save up my gold again to hopefully hit 3-star Kayle once I roll down again. Lulu is a really good unit for the late game, especially against AP heavy comps, which is what I've been losing to. I don't really need to reroll here, but I hit a 2-star Ezreal, so I switched that in for the Twisted Fate. I positioned my Kayle and my Aurelia on opposite sides, so it's harder for enemies to target any particular damage dealer, but I really need to be scouting so that I can position optimally for what people are actually playing. I get good units here, and decide to keep the Cybers, but neither Fiora nor the 1-star Vi are very strong. If I took them out and put in Lulu and Kassadin, keeping the Shen over the Thresh, I think that would have been stronger. My Irelia gets Zephyr'd here, which is why I lose this fight, and that's another reason why scouting is super duper important. Here I bring my units in a bit to protect my Kayle, as she is the primary source of damage for my team. This time my Kayle and my Ezreal get Zephyr'd. The Ezreal is fine, but Kayle getting her ult off late is tragic. I still win, but it was very, very close when it definitely did not need to be. All of these items, except for the Dark Star, are really good, which is nice since I have last pick. I go for the IE, so I can use the glove already on the Irelia for a QSS. With this 2-star Kassadin, Cybernetics are definitely weaker, so they go. I made the mistake though of not putting in Shen, so I lost Blade Master synergy. Not having that synergy made both my Kayle and my Aurelia, my primary damage dealers, much weaker, as well as having a weaker frontline than I had before, so I lose this fight pretty badly. I switch in this Shen, but it should have either been for the Thresh or the Blitzcrank, as I've lost Celestial plus Lulu is just on her own a really strong unit. I also don't think I needed to use the Nico for Shen. It would have been better to save that for a Lulu, as a 2-star Lulu is really, really strong, and getting 5-cost units is pretty hard to do since they're very rare. I'm losing a bunch, so I should be looking to put in Mystic, Celestial, and Vanguard to be more defensive. I already have my Celestial units, but for Mystic the best would be Karma, and for Vanguard the best would be Jace. For the second time this game, I spend a lot of gold, 48 gold this time, to level up, this time to level 9 to complete my Mystic synergy. This gold might have been better to use to reroll to try to hit 3-star Kayle. Before I decided, I should have scouted to see how many Kayles were being used, as there are only 12 in the pool, so if a lot of them were already taken, it definitely would have been better to level up. Otherwise, rerolling might have been the better option. I've made it into the top 4, but if I'm going to go for top 1, then my win condition is definitely 3-star Kayle. So at this point, I need to save up more gold so I can reroll and hopefully find 6 more copies of Kayle. I get another Kayle and another Lulu, and at this point, I'm really wishing that I hadn't already used my Nikos so that I could have a 2-star Lulu. I have the same problem that I had earlier, which is I spent all my gold leveling, and so now I don't have any gold to reroll to find stronger versions of the units that I have already in my board. None of these completed items are particularly helpful for my comp, and so I think the best option might have been just to get the tier to pair with the second tier that I already had to give Lulu a Seraphs so that she can get her ult off faster and hopefully more often. I take out a Chrono here to put in a Misfortune, as I'll still have Mana Reaver, and fully itemized Kayle doesn't really need 4 Chrono. 2 Chrono is perfectly fine. Plus, she pairs with my Ezreal for Blaster bonus. Unfortunately, Brawler Blaster with 3-star Jinx and 3-star Cho is way stronger than my build, so I lose here and end up in 3rd place. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, leave a comment. Thank you.